Welcome back to Late Night with SJG Perspective. As always, there is no notice. I'm just going live and trying to get back up on the horse because it's been a minute and I keep not being very consistent. But I keep messing around in my studio and still dialing it in. So I wanted to jump on and feel like I'm at least doing something, right? And I wanted to speak to a couple things that I found kind of interesting in the old news. Check 1, 2, check. Not pit. There we go. Not. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't distorting because I felt like I'd been distorting the last couple times. Anyway, probably should cut that part out. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Iran stuff going on, and then also I wanted to talk about some stuff with the climate change hysteria. And there was an interesting article that was put together and put out by the Competitive Enterprise Institute, where they compiled 50 bad predictions when it came to climate change and apocalyptic endings of the world, either through climate change or drought or global warming or global cooling. And they compiled this list, and I find it so interesting, but yet very disheartening, concerning with what the rhetoric that is being passed around right now in the mainstream media in this new religion of climate change, how you can't be a climate change denier or question it. And so I thought I would maybe speak to that just a little bit and just kind of see where that takes us. And then I also wanted to do something here. No, actually, I'll take that off because that's not updating. I don't think that's updating, so I'm going to take that off. Anyway, yeah, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump in and do that. Please share the video. And I don't know if I'll get anybody in. It's so late that I don't really expect to get anybody in hanging out in here tonight. But I'm going to open up my little chat window just in case we do. Wow, we got 3 people viewing right now. So that's pretty crazy. Jay Hamilton, I got notice. How's it going? It's going good, man. How are you, Jay? It's kind of a late night stream. Haven't done one in a while. Didn't think I'd get many people in here. And it was kind of a way to put a video up. So cheers, man. Cheers to the Night Owls. What are you local? I mean, local. Are you on the West Coast, East Coast, the other side of the world? Where are you from, Jay? As I take a beer, as I take a drink of my banquet beer, Coors banquet beer. It was cold, man. It was in the freezer, or fridge, so it was cold. Anyway, I'll let Jay take a minute to get back to me there. Anyway, so let's jump into this here. Southern Orange County, California. Okay, cool. So you're on the West Coast. I'm up here in P-Town, Portland. So it's good to have you here, man. I'm glad you got the notice and you decided to jump in. So let's. I'm gonna try to go through this. I always start a little slow, so I've been told it's 4 minutes in. I haven't got to the meat yet, but let's jump in and do this so I can get some sleep tonight. But I did want to put up a couple. See how long. I don't know how long this video is gonna take me. Hopefully it doesn't take me for wicked long, but it probably kind of will take me a little bit. But anyway, I wanted to start by going over some of these headlines. I don't know if we'll go through all of them, but I thought it'd be worthwhile going through some of these headlines just to show how crazy the predictions are and how crazy this climate hysteria, climate change, global warming hysteria has become, to where you literally can't speak out against it. There's a doctor who he has his doctorate and I believe in science or something. He's an Indian dude, Dr. Shiver. He is like a savant on all things climate change, and he rails against the science that's out there and the narrative on climate change. And I'll get his info, or I'll get his name, the guy I'm talking about, put it in the link below. As you can see, I'm so prepared. But when we talk about the AOCs, and I don't want to give AOC too much credit, because we all know that she's not the sharpest dart in the board, and she's a few rocks shy of a load, and that she's an actor. She's a twit. She's a twitty twat. But she has a lot of followers, and she has a lot of influence onto people's minds. And then you take the mainstream media, right? And then you take all these actors and all these celebrities and all of the politicians and the Al Gores and all this group that has been for the last 10 years really hardcore, the last 5 years extremely hardcore, pushing this climate change narrative, this climate, we're all going to die. Just listen to any of that. I mean, we had a town hall. They had a town hall with the wannabe Democrat, candidates. They had a town hall dedicated how many hours? 8 hours? Some crazy number of hours where they all just were asked questions and talked straight up out their arsehole. They with fear and with emotion. It's just emotive. It's all about emotion and about saying the right things to get people fired up to buy into this. It's a religion, man. It's like the social justice movement, the PC movement is a religion. This climate change is a religion to people. And if you have any doubts about it, if you have any questions about it, if you have you want to, question it at all, you are a science denier. You are a absolute terrible scourge on society, because you're killing the earth, and you're along with it the future generations, and you have you're such an idiot if you don't believe this. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're an absolute piece of crap if you don't believe in this whole climate change. But you read these headlines. I'm not going to read all these articles. Yeah. It's absolutely right. I'm not going to read a lot of chats right now because I'm going to get through these, but you're right, Jay. It is. It's just a way to get votes. That's all it is. AOC says she's woken up at 3:30 a.m. because of her anxiety about climate change. AOC appears to claim Miami will be gone in a few years because of climate change.
Parts. With free next day delivery from AutoZone, she orders the parts online as late as 10 p.m. and we deliver them the next day, so she can get back on the road.
Hang on here.
Getting the job done just got easier.
I want to listen to that. I got a bad hum. There was a stupid ad playing. AOC blames U.S. immigration crisis on climate change. Oh, man. Most American teens are frightened by climate change, poll finds, and about 1 in 4 are taking action. Look at that. Doesn't that just move your heart? These brainwashed children from our mainstream media, celebrities, actors, musicians, politicians, who are brainwashing these kids to fear so much that it's actually been leading to suicide. There's been a rise, literally the rise of eco-anxiety, climate change effects on our mental health. Here's another article. Hope and fear will fuel global climate change strikes. Another article here from the wonderful governor of Washington, Jay Inslee. Fear and action. Jay Inslee says we need healthy doses of both on climate change. We need to be fearful and make actions. We need to have fear of the climate change. Fear, man. That's what a man gave his life. Here's another one. A lawyer sets himself on fire to protest climate change. Did anyone care? I mean, you have article after article after article, and I'm not going to read these articles because it would just hurt my brain to read them. But we don't need to. We know how many. AOC said 12 years, and then I recently heard it was only 1 or 2 or 3 years than we have, and then maybe only a few months if we don't take action, it's going to be too late. So I was reading this article, which we are going to go through, from the Competitive Enterprise Institute, and it says, wrong again, 50 years of failed eco-apocalyptic predictions. And I kind of wanted to go through this article because I feel like it's so important to get a perspective that this whole climate change hysteria is not a new thing. And a lot of the younger kids, a lot of the millennials, a lot of these kids don't understand that this has been going on for 50 plus years, 60 years. This kind of hysteric climate change hysteria has been being pushed, and it is all of them have not came anywhere close to being fulfilled. Let's go through this article. Thanks goes to Tony Heller, who first collected many of these news clips and posted them on the Real Climate Science. Modern doomsayers have been predicting climate and environmental disaster. I'm going to switch views here. Modern day doomsayers have been predicting climate and environmental disaster since the 1960s. They continue to do so today. None of the apocalyptic predictions with due dates as of today have come true. What follows is a collection of notably wild predictions from notable people in government and science. More than merely spotlighting the failed predictions, this collection shows that the makers of failed apocalyptic predictions often are individuals holding respected positions in government and science. Nowadays, it's government and science and movies and music and politics and everywhere. It's just everywhere. Coming out of everybody's mouth, this nonsense. With such predictions have been and continue to be enthusiastically reported by a media eager to sensationalize headlines, the failures are typically not revisited. We'll start in 1967. It says, dire famine by 1975. It's already too late. Dire famine forecasted by 1975. It is already too late for the world to avoid a long period of famine, a Stanford University biologist said Thursday. Paul Ehrlich, he is a constant name in some of these predictions too. Paul Ehrlich said the time of famines is upon us and will be at its worst and most disastrous by 1975. I won't tell you how old I was. He said the population of the United States is already too big. The birth control may be that birth control may have to be accomplished by making it involuntary and by putting sterilizing agents into staple foods and drinking water, and that the Roman Catholic Church should be pressured into going along with routine measures of population control. So this article was written in 1967, that they were pushing sterilization. Does that sound familiar? What AOC said, that she doesn't think she wants to have kids because there may not be a world left by the time she does. Man, they were saying the same thing in 1967. Paul Ehrlich was saying the same thing in 1967 that AOC is saying today. That by 8 years, by the time he made this prediction, where do we hear that before? We only have 12 years left, right? We only have 12 years left. And it didn't happen. Didn't even almost happen. 1969, everyone will disappear in a cloud of blue steam by 1989. So in 2 years later, it was everyone's going to disappear in a cloud of blue steam by 1989. The New York Times, so it isn't like these are some off-the-wall, publications. The New York Times, which they are off the wall, foe of pollution sees lack of time, asserts environmental ills outrun public concern. Palo Alto, California, August 5th. The trouble with almost all the environmental problems, says Paul Ehrlich, the population biologist, is that by the time we have enough evidence to convince people, you're dead. Does that sound familiar to what we hear nowadays? With the whole fact that if you don't do something right now, we're dead. We're dead in a few months. We're dead in a few years. We're dead in 12 years. We're all going to die. The world's going to end. We need to control our population. Meanwhile, the Democrats that push all this are the same ones who are pushing for unmitigated immigration into the United States. They don't take that into account. That's a kind of a illogical. They say overpopulation is a problem, but let's import millions of people here illegally, and that's okay. Anyways, I digress. We must realize that unless we are extremely lucky, everybody will disappear in a cloud of blue steam in 20 years. So in 1967, he said you only have till 1975. In 1969, he said we only have till 1989. In 1970, Ice Age by 2000. The Boston Globe, Thursday, April 16th, 1970. Scientists predict a new ice age by the 21st century. So back in the 70s, we were all going to freeze to death. And now, we're all going to, it was, and just up until a year or two ago, we all were going to burn up. And now it's just climate change because they realize their models suck and they don't bear out. So they're just saying, well, it's not really global warming. It's just climate change in general. It's climate change. Air pollution may obliterate the sun and cause a new ice age in the first third of the next century. The demands for cooling water will boil dry the entire flow of the rivers and streams of the continental United States. In 1970, America is subject to water rationing by 1974 and food rationing by 1980. The Daily Redlands Facts, Redlands, California, Tuesday, October 6, 1970. Dr. Ehrlich, again, outspoken ecologist to speak. Giving aspirin to cancer victims is what Dr. Paul Ehrlich thinks of current proposals for population control. No real action has been taken to save the environment, he maintains, and it does need saving. Ehrlich predicts that the oceans will be as dead as Lake Erie in less than a decade. The DDT in our fatty tissues has reached levels high enough to cause brain damage and cirrhosis of the liver. America will be subject to water rationing by 1974 and food rationing by 1980. 1971, new ice age coming. U.S. scientists see new ice age coming. The world could be as little as 50 or 60 years away from a disastrous new ice age, a leading atmospheric scientist predicts. Dr. S.I. Rasul of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and Columbia University says that in the next 50 years, the fine dust man constantly puts into the atmosphere by fossil fuel burning could screen out so much sunlight that the average temperature could drop by 6 degrees. If sustained over several years, 5 to 10, he estimated, such a temperature decrease could be sufficient to trigger an ice age. 1972, new ice age by 2070. The main conclusion of the meeting was that a global deterioration of climate by order of magnitude larger than any hereto experienced by civilized mankind is a very real possibility and indeed may be due very soon. This was written by Brown University. In 1974, the new ice age is coming fast. Space satellites show new ice age coming fast. Isn't it also the new the space satellites now that are predicting all the polar caps are melting? So back then it was the space satellites saying that the new ice age is coming fast, so they must have been growing. Now it's, oh no, they're actually not growing, they're shrinking. It happens that blocking anticyclones play an important role in the characteristics of weather in the northern hemisphere and account for some adverse changes in our own climate. 1974, another ice age. Time puts out. Telltale signs are everywhere, from the unexpected persistent thickness of pack ice in the waters around Iceland to the southward migration of warmth-loving creatures like the armadillo in the Midwest. 1974, ozone depletion, a great peril to life. Great peril to life. Gas pairs away Earth's ozone. And then it has this little graph. It says in 1976, the cooling, so writes Stephen Schneider, a young climatologist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado, reflecting the consensus of the climatological community. The consensus that we're cooling. It's cooling down, man. We're having global cooling. We're all going into the next ice age. We're going to have walking, talking sloths. In 1974, Schneider and Bryson tried to explain to the White House policymaking group why conditions are likely to worsen. One of the most depressing anecdotes in the book is Schneider's description of the deaf ear their warnings received. Wow. Doesn't that sound similar to what we're saying today? That, oh man, you guys aren't listening. We're all going to die and nobody cares. You guys should care. We're all going to die. 1980, acid rain kills life in lakes. They put this out in 1980, July, right? 1976. And in April 1980, acid rain, no environmental crisis study concludes. So, 4 years before they said, oh, acid rain's going to kill the lakes. Then 4 years later, oh no, we were wrong. Sorry. 1978, no end in sight, a 30-year cooling trend. You can't make this up. 1988, James Hansen forecasts increased regional drought in the 1990s. The Miami News. More droughts likely, expert tells senators. 1988 on way to be the hottest ever as world temperatures are up sharply. But the last really dry year in the Midwest was 1988, and the recent years have been record wet there. Kind of threw a little bit of a spoke in that wheel. 1988, Washington, D.C. says over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Washington, D.C. days over 90 degrees from 35 to 85. Prepare for long, hot summers. If you like last summer's record temperatures, you're going to love the 1990s, says James Hansen, the NASA scientist who, during congressional hearings on the Midwestern drought, linked greenhouse warming to the heat wave. Washington, D.C., for instance, would go from its current 35 days a year over 90 degrees to 85 days a year. The level of the oceans will rise anywhere from 1 to 6 feet. Yet Obama just bought himself a little nice place up in Vermont, I believe, right on the coast. It's about $12 million or something. 1988, Maldives completely underwater in 30 years. Sea level is threatening to completely cover this Indian Ocean nation of 1,196 small islands within the next 30 years, according to authorities. But the end of the Maldives and its 200,000 people could come sooner if drinking water supply dry up by 1992, as predicted. Right, 1989, rising seas to obliterate nations by 2000. 1989, New York City's West Side Highway underwater by 2019. So in 1989, New York City's West Side Highway underwater by 2019. Jim Hansen, the scientist who in 1988 predicted the greenhouse effect before Congress. I went over to the window with him and looked out at Broadway in New York City and said, if what you're saying about the greenhouse effect is true, is anything going to look different down there in 20 years? He looked for a while and was quiet and didn't say anything for a couple seconds. Then he said, well, there will be more traffic. I, of course, didn't think he heard the question right. Then he explained, the West Side Highway, which runs along the Hudson River, will be underwater. You'll have signs in restaurants saying water by request only. Within 20 to 30 years, and remember, we had this conversation in 1988 or 1999. He said, when did he say this would all happen? Does he still believe these things? Yes, he still believes everything. I talked to him a few months ago, and he said he wouldn't change anything he had said then. I wonder about now. I wonder now, since it's 2019 and there's no water over the roadways there, if he would change his tune. He probably would. He'd probably say, yeah, I was off by a couple years. It's still coming. 1995 to present, climate model failure. This is really interesting. Okay, I haven't been on this article. I apologize. I've just been reading, and I thought I was sharing these articles with you guys. I will put this in the description so you guys can read it too. My bad. That whole time you were just looking at me. Anyways, 1995 to present, climate model failure. If you can see here, I don't know if you can see the red line that's going up, right? Average of 102 CMIP5 model runs in 32 groupings. So here's the model that we're just going to get hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. But here's the actual data points, right? The blue line, the blue and the green line. And as you can see, it stayed pretty much the same. There's been really it's been up a little bit, then down. So it's actually not followed the climate change model at all. The model is terribly wrong. 2,000 children won't know what snow is, according to The Independent. In 2000, they said children won't know what snow is starting to disappear from our lives. It's gone. No more dreaming of a white Christmas. It's all downhill. 2002, famine in 10 years by The Guardian. The Guardian, what a bullshit. Oh, Guardian, you're so stupid. 2004, Britain to have Siberian climate by 2020. Man, it better freeze up quick if they want this prediction to come through, because it's not been that cold there. Now the Pentagon tells Bush climate change will destroy us. Britain will be Siberian in less than 20 years. Britain is plunged into Siberian climate by 2020. Nuclear conflict, mega droughts, and famine and widespread rioting will erupt across the world. 2008, Arctic will be ice-free. So, again, you heard me talk about those articles in 19 70s, we were going to be in an ice age. Then here in 2008, Arctics will be ice-free by 2018. Well, that didn't happen, did it? NASA scientists, we're toast. Hansen, echoing work by other scientists, said that in 5 to 10 years, the Arctic will be free of sea ice in the summer. Representative Ed Markey, the Democrat of Massachusetts committee chairman, said Dr. Hansen was right. 20 years later, we've recognized him as a climate prophet. No, he wasn't right. He's wrong. 2008. Oh, this is a familiar face, isn't it? Al Gore warns of ice-free Arctic by 2013. 10 years ago, Al Gore predicted the North Pole ice caps would be gone. Inconveniently, it's still there. Al warned them that the entire North Pole polarized cap will disappear in 5 years, but it's still there. Arctic sea ice extent. It's still there and still growing. Not going away. 2009, Prince Charles says only 8 years to save the planet. So in 2009, he said we only have 8 years to save the planet. Remember what AOC's been saying? Remember what all the politicians have been saying recently? We have 12 years. We have 8 months. We have 3 years. We have the very limited time. We need to do something right now because this is just terrible. We're all going to die. 2009, UK Prime Minister says 50 days to save the planet from catastrophe. Gordon Brown, we have fewer than 50 days to save our planet from catastrophe. 2009, Arctic free ice by 2014. Gore, polar ice cap may disappear by summer of 2014. Well, I thought you said it was 2013, Al. What is it? Is it 2013, 2014? He just keeps changing it when it doesn't happen. They just keep changing it. See, they keep saying global warming, and all of a sudden it's not been warming up. Actually, trends have been showing that it's actually been cooling down. It's not. It's climate change. It's climate change. It's climate change. We're all going to die just from climate change and the hurricanes and the floods and everything. It's climate change. It might be some climate change. There is some climate change. It doesn't mean it's man-made. And if it's man-made, it does. We don't know how much of the man is making it, right? There is no consensus on that. I did a video on this a couple months back that the 97% scientific consensus is the most leading one of the most misleading statistics that is out there. It's complete bunk. It's more like 1.6% of scientists think that man is causing the great extent of global warming and anthropogenic global warming, and that it's a 1.6 consensus. If you go back and watch my video, it's like a 15, 20 minute video. It spells it all out and lays it all, breaks that whole 97% number down. It is an absolute joke and a lie and a fallacy and terrible science, but it's pushed again. We've looked at all these articles, right, where it says, the rise, the eco rise of anxiety, climate change affects our mental health. We have AOC saying AOC appears to claim Miami will be gone in a few years because of climate change. AOC says she's woken up at 3:30 a.m. because of her anxiety about climate change. We have a lawyer that set himself on fire because of climate change. We have kids saying that we have Jay Inslee saying fear and action. Jay Inslee says we need a healthy dose of both on climate change. There's kids are committing suicide because of this fear over climate change, and it's all bullshit. Gas hydrate dissociation off Svalbard. No, that's not it. Sorry. Oh yeah, here. The Guardian, July 24th, 2013. Gas hydrate dissociation off Svalbard induced by isostatic rebound rather than global warming. So there was an abstract paper on why whatever. 2013, Arctic ice-free by 2016. U.S. Navy predicts summer ice-free Arctic by 2016. The French minister, 2014, only 500 days before climate chaos. French foreign minister, 500 days to avoid climate chaos. But the planet is still standing. So here was 50, I want to say there was something like 50 in there, predictions that go back and show just how bullshit this whole fear-mongering is when it comes to climate change. Climate change is probably happening. It's not for sure. Well, no, there is some definitely changes in our season a little bit. Warmer, cooler summers, a little bit warmer winters, and so on and so forth. So, but we don't know. We're only working with like true hard data, a couple 100 years of hard data. And that's being generous, right? Generous of actual factual data we can look at. That's the only information we have. Going back to the late 1800s, right? 1890s or whatever. So we're talking 150 maybe years of actual data that we can really we can really plot out and take a look at. And then a lot of that stuff was you can't even really count all of that because of the technology of our thermometers and our record keeping back then. So, really, if you want to get technical, it's really since maybe the 1950s or 60s that we've been really trying to keep an eye on this and see what's happening. And the models have fallen apart, right? All the climate change models have fallen apart. So they steer away from those. And it's all about hysteria. It's all about this agenda from the politicians to money grab and to have control and to have something to lord over us, to instill fear in us and to instill this emotive action. There is no logical, really truly logical explanations or logical standing for the fear that is being pushed at us. And I just find it really eye-opening, and I find it ridiculous. And I think that it's something that we should be reminded of, that, hey, this ain't the first rodeo, that everyone's been saying for 40, 50 years now. There's always been the alarmists that have said we're all going to die, the earth's going to flood, the earth's going to burn up, the earth is going to freeze, well, man's causing it. We need to have drastic action. We only have a couple years before it's too late. We only have a couple months before it's too late. It's all a bunch of crap. It's looking into a crystal ball. What we should be concerned about is nuclear weapons flying at country to country and wiping ourselves out that way. That is a far more likelihood of, causing mass death and mass extinction than climate change. Climate change is not what we need to be worried about. And these politicians that are scaring you with it, and the celebrities, they're morons. And some of them aren't morons. Some of them know exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. Al Gore has made a crap ton of money off of his whole push for the, save the environment, because he, with his fear mongering. So a lot of them know what they're doing. Others are just emotive, and it's the cool hip thing. And how dare you speak out against this, the religion of climate change. And if you do, you're a science denier, and you are just a, Bill Nye the Science Guy. And the indoctrination taking place is just, it's mind numbing, the amount of the indoctrination on this whole thing that's taking place. I am a proud skeptic of climate change, a proud climate denier, because I do believe climate change is happening, but I think it has much, 90, I don't know what percentage, but the majority of it is just the earth and is just our cycles. And we don't know how this whole thing works, hundreds of years out, 500, 600, 700, 1,000 years. We don't know really the cycles of what the earth goes through and what it does. And I guess we're going to find out if we're still here and we don't kill ourselves by going to war with Iran or something like that and getting in World War III, which I was also going to talk about tonight, but I don't really have enough time to do that. So I am going to probably call it a night. I appreciate the guys that came in the chat tonight. I know it's late, and so you guys are diehards, man. That's cool. It says, I caught another live stream tonight. I forgot to bring my headphones. Sorry, I'm talking too loud. It says climate change doesn't exist, just another way for the Dems to gain votes. Absolutely. Mark said, I learned in school that most of this country was going to be under glaciers at one time. Politicians are liars. They just want our money. That's exactly what it is. Democrats deny real science for their lies about climate change and global warming. They absolutely do. And these same people that say, how dare you be a science denier, are the same ones who will say, hey, if a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man, that's fine. If you were born with a penis, but you think you're a woman, then you can be a woman. They forget science then. Science goes out the window to them then. Actual, biological, experimental, provable science goes right out the window. But when it comes to these emotive things where they want to gain control over our lives, gain money from us, gain votes, put us in a state of panic and control our minds and brainwash us, at that point, you can't be a science denier because it's a science. 97% of scientists agree. No, they don't. About 1.6% of scientists in that study agreed that man was causing the majority of global warming. 1.6% of scientists. And by the way, that was only out of about 2,000 scientists that actually took part in that. So that's another little fun fact, right? You think you hear scientists and you think all the scientists in the world. No, there was only, anyways, go watch that video. That'll explain it better. Anyway, appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I'm going to get out of here so I can go to bed, but I am going to be on this weekend. I don't have any duties, so I'm going to probably jump on with Drone Tech this weekend, and we're going to do a live stream. That'll be good. And I want to talk about Iran if I get a chance tomorrow or on Friday. I want to give you some of my thoughts on what's going on in Iran, too, from my perspective. Anyways, I appreciate you guys hanging out. It is Thursday. I hit a lot when I want to go type O. That's funny. That's okay, man. I mean what you know. All right, Mark and Jay, thanks for hanging out, and anybody else who's in the chat, not saying anything. Until next time, without fear or animus, it's SJG Perspective. You guys have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.